Imagine putting a race car engine into a shopping cart. Well, that's pretty much what I'm going to be doing today, but instead of a race car engine, it's a $1,500 GPU, and instead of a shopping cart, is the cheapest PC I could find, which you could buy yourself for just $32. And whether you're building a gaming PC for $5 or $5,000, the one mistake that everyone tells you to avoid at all costs is bottlenecking your components. But in this video, I'm gonna ignore all the experts and make the most unbalanced gaming PC that I can by putting a $1,500 graphics card in a $32 PC. But you might be wondering, how good could the specs possibly be in a $32 PC? It's so incredibly cheap that you could literally buy 5 of these for the price of a single copy of Windows and still have enough money to buy 29 Electron channel memberships. Well, if you take a look inside this dust collector, the first thing you'll notice is these 2 sticks of 1333 MHz DDR3 RAM, which is disgustingly slow, but it is pretty impressive for a computer released in 2009 because these are the same speeds as my other potato PC that was released 5 years after. But that's about it for the good news, because the thing that's really holding this PC back is that instead of 16 or even 8 gigs of RAM, this thing only came with 4 gigabytes, which is below the minimum requirements for pretty much every game in 2024. But as you probably expected, the RAM is not going to be the only thing holding this PC back, because this graphics card barely even matches the Google definition of a graphics card, and you can buy it for yourself for about $5. But the one thing that's going to keep this PC alive is this Intel Pentium E6500, which was released back in 2009. But just knowing that the most powerful part of this PC is an Intel Pentium from 2008 made me want to commit super family-friendly activities. But with a clock speed of 2.93 GHz, it's at least faster than the CPU in my storage server, so it might be able to somewhat keep up with this $1,500 graphics card. But just by looking at this thing, you might not think that this looks like a $1,500 graphics card. It's so small, so realistically, how fast could this GPU really be? Well, this is an enterprise-grade RTX 4000 ADA SFF, and is actually the fastest GPU of its kind, with only the RTX 4060 LP coming close to it. With 20 gigabytes of VRAM, this phone-sized GPU packs almost as much power as a fully powered RTX 4070 because they both use the same exact chip, the AD104 GPU die. And even though the 4070 is one of the most efficient high-end GPUs out there, the RTX 4000 is just crazy, drawing less than half the power and still keeping up with the 4070. But all of this is just numbers, and nobody has ever tried gaming on this thing with an Intel Pentium. And now I know why, because this challenge took me 4 days to complete. 4 days to get a game to run. My past self had no idea what he was getting into, so I started day 1 feeling super optimistic. To get started with the challenge, we need to make some space for this dual slot GPU by first getting rid of the old graphics card as well as this network adapter. Now we have enough space to put in the brand new RTX 4000, which I only just unboxed last week. I know I could have easily bought myself a 4060 LP and completed the same exact challenge, but who else is out here gaming on a RTX 4000? Plus I got this thing for free, so I thought I might as well put this thing to work. But as I put this monster GPU into the slot, I noticed something that I didn't think would be a huge problem in the future. So on modern GPUs, you'll see this metal plate with the HDMI DisplayPort, and in this case, mini DisplayPort ports. And if you move to the left, you'll see these 2 prongs, which I just learned are called an I/O shield. Now I'm telling you this because this I/O shield ended up being a way bigger problem than I expected, because this PC case is not nearly as deep as your regular ATX case. As you can see, the shield is hitting the back of the case, stopping my GPU from being fully inserted. I even tried removing all of these metal brackets, and I still couldn't fit the card into the slot. This was really disappointing, not because we're running into more problems than I expected, but because these would not be problems if I was just a bit more technical, since all I would need to do is cut a couple holes through the PC case to allow the silver I/O shield to pass through the back of the case. But again, that's just not an option because I don't have the tools or the skills to make this change. What I do have though is this external GPU dock, which basically allows you to connect a GPU to a computer externally, and you would probably expect me to use it for this challenge, but this computer is too old to have an M.2 slot, so I couldn't solve this problem just that easily. So we're gonna have to resort to plan B, and just like any other plan B, this solution is about as scuffed as it can get, because I'm gonna unscrew the entire motherboard and rip it out of my PC. And now, nothing can stop me from plugging in my graphics card, and nothing can stop me from running Windows 11. Or so I hoped. because right after I plugged in the GPU, I realized we might have, and you guessed it, yet another massive issue. But out of the several hurdles we had to jump over today, this was easily the most unexpected. For the entirety of this video, I kept repeating that this was one of the most power efficient GPUs you could buy at only 70 watts, so you wouldn't expect us to run into an issue with the power supply, right? Well, if you take a quick glance at the minimum requirements for the RTX 4000 ADA, you'll notice that we need at least a 300 watt power supply for the entire computer, and for context, that is not a lot of power at all. In fact, that's the same power draw as my GTX 1080 Ti by itself. But for this PC to be so cheap, there had to be compromises at quite literally every corner. With only a 250 watt power supply, we are just 50 watts short of what we need, but as long as we don't stress the computer out too much, I definitely think this could work. I'm totally not nervous. Now that the RTX 4000 is in the computer, I think it's time we turn it on to make sure that this PC actually works, because I have yet to see if this thing can even turn on. Anyways, I connected the power cable as well as the DisplayPort cable, and the GPU fans are spinning. We are making good progress. The progress was so good that I immediately started installing Windows 11 for this PC, which may or may not have been a huge mistake, because this part of the challenge somehow took me over 4 days of troubleshooting, and I'm gonna try my best to compress all those hours of footage to show you everything I went through to get Windows to work without losing too much detail. Usually, I do enough research to make sure something is possible before I try it, but because I just did the impossible last week by installing Windows 11 onto a network server with an Intel N95, I thought that I could make it work on an Intel Pentium as well, so I hopped right in and tried installing Windows 11 onto this computer. But I ended up going through an endless boot loop instead because it doesn't support Windows 11. And as a very patient person, this is one of the very few things that can actually get me mad. So instead of thinking rationally and doing research before my next move, the frustration got to my head, so I tried installing Windows 10 instead, not knowing that it was also unsupported on this PC. And I ended up spending another half an hour trying to fix an unfixable problem with my hard drive because again, the real issue is that I'm a fucking dumbass. And since I was genuinely about to go insane after messing around with the slowest PC in the world, I decided to leave the rest of the challenge for tomorrow. And today would end up being the most productive day of the challenge, but not in the way that you might expect, because I got 3 new deliveries on the same day. A brand new microphone, chair, and most importantly, a desk. So now I don't just have to leave this second computer on the floor like I was earlier. But it wasn't all good news because setting all of that up took the entire day. So here I am the next day, trying to come up with a way to get this ancient computer to turn on, and I narrowed it down to 2 options. Option 1 was to just use Windows 8. Now this would kill all chances of being able to play Fortnite without resorting to cloud gaming, but this would be the best option if Microsoft didn't end all Windows 8 support nearly 2 years ago. So this leads us back to Windows 10, which might come as a surprise to you because I just showed you that I couldn't get it to work. But this time, I'm gonna do a couple things differently to make things work. The first major change was switching my Windows version from 64-bit to 32-bit. The Intel Pentium technically is a 64-bit CPU, but it didn't work the last time, so I thought I'd try something different anyways, because you know what they say. Trying the same thing over and over again and expecting different results will only make you go insane. But I ended up going insane regardless because I only just found out that this hard drive is completely dead and probably has been dead for years. And looking back at the clips, you could see that both of these partitions are part of my 2TB hard drive, and the hard drive in the PC is nowhere to be seen. And I wish I could say that I found that out before following this entire Reddit guide, because if I knew that the hard drive was the problem in the first place, I would have just bought myself another one for the challenge, but it is way too late to do that at this point. So because replacing this hard drive was just not an option due to my time constraints, I decided to do something that Microsoft themselves tried to stop me from doing for this entire video. But I don't think I have any other choice, so I'm installing Windows directly onto the external hard drive and running the whole system on it. Now hard drives are already extremely slow, but running Windows off of a hard drive connected by a USB is actually gonna be a nightmare. After 40 minutes of research, I began the installation, and I thought to myself, a regular Windows installation takes about 30 minutes, so Windows to go might take an hour, maybe 2 if I'm generous, but no, after 2 hours and 28 minutes, we only got 35.3% of the way there. What the skibbity? But there's one thing I didn't tell you, because during these 2 hours and 28 minutes, I wasn't just sitting there doing nothing. I was scouring the house for a spare hard drive and still couldn't find one. But I did find this SATA SSD, so we can finally just do a regular Windows installation. They're actually making fun of me at this point, bro. There's no way. I've been patient, bro. Oh my god. Several minutes. More like several hours. So without wasting any more time, I immediately downloaded the graphics driver for my GPU, but when I restarted my computer, I somehow locked myself out. Yeah, you know what? Maybe the PC's not slow and I'm just slow. I tried every password I knew, even resetted my Microsoft account, and I'm still locked out of my PC. So I had to reset it, and fortunately, I didn't lock myself out this time, so I installed both Steam and Epic Games, as well as Fortnite and Tomb Raider 2013, to see just how well this Intel Pentium can hold up. Now you're probably wondering why I only installed 2 seemingly random games. Well, there are actually 3 good reasons. Firstly, this SSD only has 128 gigabytes of storage, and I'm trying not to use over 80% of the space on this SSD, because if you only have about 20% of it left, you will not get your computer's full potential, and I wanted to give this Intel Pentium the best testing environment as I possibly could. Secondly, Tomb Raider 2013 is the most graphically demanding game that the Dell Vostro still meets the requirements for, as the next game in the trilogy requires 6 gigabytes of RAM, and we only have 4. The third and final reason is because Fortnite is the most popular game in the world, and if I'm gonna test any game, even if my PC doesn't reach the minimum requirements, it would be this one. And you might think that this CPU is gonna suffer, even at low settings, but I cranked up the settings in Tomb Raider all the way up to the ultimate preset, and we still pulled over 80 FPS. With a few stutters, which could possibly be fixed by doing a bit of optimizing. But what cannot be fixed is Fortnite, which refuses to boot up because none of the parts in this computer meet the minimum requirements. But as always, I was ready for this. Earlier in this video, I mentioned that my other PC has 16 gigabytes of RAM running at the exact same speed as this PC. So naturally, I decided to borrow some of it. But that's when I realized something. It uses 4 separate slots, meaning the 16 gigabytes are split into 4 4GB sticks, and this computer only has 2 slots. So if you do the math, we can only max out at 8 gigabytes, which is completely fine because that meets the minimum requirements for Fortnite. These sticks are also a lot smaller but have twice the memory. I've been saying big things come in small packages, bro. With my brand new set of RAM sticks, I rebooted Fortnite, and this time we made it further, but unfortunately, Fortnite still refused to boot up, and then it blue screened immediately after, which was pretty disappointing because up until this point, I honestly thought this PC had a chance, but without upgrading every single part in this computer, playing Fortnite is just not possible. But I'm not the type to give up easily, so I'll definitely be optimizing and overclocking this thing in the future. But if you want to see me transform an entire server into a monster gaming PC, watch this video next.